fine, strong and knowledgeable Jojo.
Hello.
How are you going today?
I'm good.
We'll get started, and as I do, I want to ask you, how are you feeling at the moment?
Good. Yeah, it's busy. Having 3 kids, my own business. I'm prepping for a competition, a bodybuilding competition, which is next week. Juggling motherhood with all that stuff can be really tedious and, well, exhausting.
Yeah.
But other than that, I'm great. It's really hard to slow down, but you just take it as it comes.
Yeah. Were you always this organised with like managing everything, your schedule?
Yeah, well, I don't know if you, or if anybody, I suppose, is really into star signs, but I'm a Virgo, so I feel...
am.
Okay, amazing. I'm a Virgo, so I like controlling things. I don't know if that's great or not so great. But yeah, so I have lived at home since I was 17.
Yeah.
And I feel like I was forced into a position where I really did need to take control of my life. So from then I got myself to school every day at 17 years old.
Yeah.
And I've always had that determination and drive to succeed and do things. So I guess it's ingrained in me a little bit. And as you become a parent and you're responsible for somebody other than yourself, you're almost, again, forced into doing everything. And I suppose you can take a step back and not do so much for yourself, but I always say you need to fill your own cup up before you fill anybody else's cup up.
Yeah.
And so I think that's probably where it comes from.
Yeah.
I have this feeling or want to fill my own cup up, and in order to do that, you need to be on and organised and allow space for yourself. But I just think that allows you to show up as a good mum, a good partner, a good wife, a good friend, you know.
Like, where did you grasp the knowledge of, I guess, filling your own cup and before, you know, others? Because in your job role as a coach, you are serving others constantly. And also at your home as well.
Yeah. My energy, so with my job as a strength coach, you're right, my energy is, it's very much expended outwards and it's not so inwards. In saying that, you're probably right in the sense that I have had to reflect at times and take a step back and think about how I do fill my own cup up. But I've always strived to be better. And so I guess the want has come from wanting to be better.
Yeah.
And whatever that looks like, I guess it didn't really matter. It wasn't that I wanted to earn X amount of money. It wasn't that I wanted to have a really beautiful house. It wasn't that I wanted to have tangible assets that were going to reflect my success. It was more just, I want to be better.
Yeah.
And so if I'm doing something now, what else could I do more or better to, again, be better? So it was more of a how can I level up from where I am now, I think. And I think I've always just got that in my head. I really do struggle to sit with where I'm currently at. And it does just come from that mindset of what else can you be doing right now?
Right.
And it doesn't have to be huge. But I guess as you evolve and develop through life, and again, I think motherhood's it's just something that you're forced into. So I think it's a big time in your life where everything changes and you either crumble or you thrive. And I've seen mothers crumble, and I obviously coach a lot of mums and I support them and hold their hand and give them tools to manage and support them to develop themselves.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's always avenues that you can take, and it's probably, again, stems from like an all or nothing approach. Like I think we do get caught up in an all or nothing approach. But as I said before, like you're either going to work towards something and think, I need to get this, or you can either just take the mindset of, okay, what can I control and what can I do better?
Yeah.
And I think when you let go of that all or nothing approach, you really can just work on things that are in your control and are within your scope.
Yeah.
It's not like I do anything out of my scope. I don't feel like I do anyways.
I mean, it all seems like it naturally flows to you, like everything that you're doing from motherhood and your business. Like, it seems like it suits you.
Yeah. I suppose I created my own life. I created my own job, and through COVID, you know, I was a trainer, and I suppose everyone had to step away and figure out what they were going to do to earn money, because you couldn't really earn money.
Yeah.
And then everything obviously went into the online space. But when you work for yourself, I guess you do make things work for you. Mm-hmm. In saying that, working from home with 3 children is really, really difficult. And that's where I do have the support of like my husband, my mum, my mother-in-law. And I do always say to my clients who are mums as well, like, you really do need to utilize the village around you. You need to utilize friends, mums, speak to your husbands. Like, that's probably the one thing I encourage all partners with mothers. Like, a lot of them think that they're doing this on their own. And as much as it's not as traditional in our day and age to have your partner go out and work and you stay home and look after the children, there is still a lot of mums in a position where they are at home with their children and their husbands do go and earn a wage.
Yeah. And
because they don't earn a wage, they're sort of stuck to this mothering role, or feel this sense of guilt that they can't go do all these other things, or, you know, spend 3 hours a week training because they're not earning a wage for what they're doing, but their husband's out all day earning a wage. And so it's like this this mental barrier, isn't it? And this lack of communication between you and your partner or husband about, again, your energy going out and what's coming in. Whereas me and my husband have a really good understanding of what it's like to both work, both parent, both share a responsibility of the house. And honestly, we have such good communication that even if I am struggling, he will pick up the slack.
Yeah.
Or if he's struggling, I'll pick up the slack.
Was it always like that?
No.
Or did you get to this point?
No, we got to this point.
And how would you say? Like, what are the key things that did get you to this point?
Interesting. In my second pregnancy with Daisy, I was in my second trimester and I suffered prenatal depression. And I've spoken about bettering yourself in any capacity. And I was really struggling. And I loved my husband. I loved my son, Ezzy, at the time, because he was the only baby I had, and I was pregnant with Daisy.
Yeah.
And I suffered really bad mental illness for the full second into third trimester.
Right.
Really quite severe. And I actually reached out to a therapist who then got me in contact with my psych at the time. And I started having regular psych appointments. And it was really interesting. The tools that she gave me to cope were what allowed me, and I think my husband, to progress forward communication wise. And I was somebody that would shut down a lot. So if something happened, I would walk away from the conversation and say, I don't want to talk about it anymore. Shut the conversation down. And one of the things my psych told me was, if you put the phone down, you have to pick it back up. And it stopped me from shutting down the conversation because I feared picking the phone up more than what I did stopping the conversation. Yeah. So I was like, I can't pick the phone back up. I just need to keep having this conversation. And so I would no longer step away from things that scared me or that I was too overwhelming to deal with, and started dealing with them. And as a partnership, we just got really good at communicating because we had almost boundaries to deal with things that overwhelmed us, or things that weren't working. Or we were then able to dissect and then troubleshoot parenting issues or family issues or anything. And it got better from there. So it was almost like I had to get rid of this perfectionist.
Oh, okay. There's a bug flying around your face.
Oh my gosh.
Hi. Sorry.
I had to get rid of a perfectionist mindset.
Yes.
Which I very much had. And it was funny, before I had that psych appointment, I would probably say a lot of my reason was, it's his fault. He's always doing this. He's always doing that.
Right.
And then after it, I was very much I was reading this book as well, and I wish I remembered what it was called. I've lent it to a friend. But I would read it and I would say babe, listen to this. And I was like, that's me. And he was like, I love this book. But I've never not been the one to be like, that's not my fault. I've always been able to step up and say,
like, take accountability.
Yeah, take accountability and say, like, okay, that's definitely what I've been doing.
Yeah.
So I think you do really need to go in with an open mind, where I think a lot of mums feel guilt in even mentioning that they're struggling or that they need time to themselves or that there's an issue or that they're unhappy or that they're at borderline just struggling.
Where do you think this guilt stems from?
Well, you're forced into being a mother.
Yeah.
It sounds horrible in a way.
Well,
it's not horrible,
it's also
but
a fact.
It's a fact, yeah. You're like, you fall pregnant and then you have to carry a baby for 9 months.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful. It's amazing. It's the best thing ever. I love
Yeah.
it. I love being pregnant. But the dad just sort of goes on his everyday life, and then the baby's born and the mum has to start breastfeeding and you start navigating your new self. But the dad just keep doing what he's doing. And there's not much he can do at the start. Like, I remember when I had Ezzy, Sam was like, I don't know what to do. And I was like, there's really not much you can do right now.
True.
But there is, in the sense that, and it's funny, as I've had each baby, because I've had 3.
Yeah.
There's so many things you can be doing.
Yeah.
And so at the start, he was like, I don't really know what to do. But it's almost like all the little things, like the washing, the cleaning, the making tea, the making breakfast even, the taking the baby off your hands and bathing them at night, the giving you like half an hour to go nap, all those little things. Like, I remember Sam would feed my youngest, Bear, now at 3 weeks old with a bottle, and I would express and go and have a session to myself outside in the gym.
Yeah.
And people would say to me, like, how do you go to the gym at this time in motherhood?
Yeah.
I said, I just express. And they're like, are you comfortable leaving your baby with your husband? It's like, absolutely. Like, he's done this 3 times over.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. But I guess, again, it's the guilt of leaving your baby with your husband that hasn't birthed them, and you've got this connection with your baby, don't you? And you don't think that your husband's going to have that connection or know what to do when the baby cries, but honestly, you actually have to let them work it out themselves as well.
Yeah.
Like, they are the parent also. And I think as mothers, we want to helicopter parent everything.
Yeah.
But you just can't. Even though you know best. Like, it's like teaching someone how to ride a bike. You can't tell a child or anybody that you need to balance, and once you get the balance of it, you'll be able to ride the bike forever.
Yeah.
Do you remember that moment as a kid where all of a sudden you take your training wheels off and you're like, oh my God, I'm getting it. And then it's easy.
Yeah.
It's the same thing that happens with dads, and mums. Like, you just sort of have to let them go.
Yeah.
And they'll figure out their own way to settle a baby. Like, Sam, if he has to put Bear to sleep, will put a certain song on his phone and it'll play in the background, and he'll just, I guess, rock him to sleep standing.
Yeah.
And then if I'm putting Bear to sleep, I'll put him on the boob because I can.
Yeah.
But Sam can't do that, so he has to find his own way to do it. So you really do need to let go. You do really need to communicate. You do really need to plan as well. Plan when you're going to go do things. Communicate with your partner when you want to train, or if you want to train. Communicate with them when you need time to yourself.
Yeah.
Like, as much as they've been out working all day, you've been with your children all day, and it can get really tedious. It can get really tedious, especially having conversations with 10-month-olds, 3-year-olds and 5-year-olds.
All the time.
All the time, yeah. And they just don't understand things the way that you do. So you might answer a question 4 times and your brain's about to explode. And it's funny, like, I'm itching to get out of the house by the time Sam gets home. I'll absolutely admit I am. Like, I go to the gym and it's the one part of my day where the only thing I think about is the gym. Whereas every other part of my day, I'm thinking about mothering, my business, washing, cooking dinner. And so my life is very much hectic, but I find such peace in going to the gym. I just put my music on, and the only thing I need to focus on is lifting weights.
And it's also just focusing on you.
Yeah, it's just me. Yeah, I'm filling my cup up. And then I go home and I feel really good. And usually Sam's really frustrated because he's had to deal with kids for like an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And then again, we just swap roles. It's very much a co-parenting relationship when it comes to parenting 3 children at this age.
Because they're all under 3?
All under 5.
5.
Yeah. So I've pretty much been pregnant, birthed and breastfeeding for 5 years.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And so what are like the key learnings that you've taken on from motherhood? Have they taught you a lot? Like, I hear a lot that, you know, kids are always teaching us things.
Yeah, they're definitely your mirror. It definitely brings up past trauma.
Yeah, I can imagine. Definitely.
Yeah. So I think with children, there's so much that I've read, but I think one of the biggest things is to not let your fears be projected on how you parent. And I do it all the time. And like an example of it is like my kids eating. Like I eat really healthy. Sam eats really healthy. Kids are very intuitive with like how they eat.
Yeah.
And you have this fear that if they don't eat well now, they're not going to eat well in the future. So you want to ingrain in them that they need to eat well now. And if they don't eat well now, then again, it's going to continue into the future and they're going to have this really bad relationship with food and they're not going to eat good food and they're just going to eat crappy food.
Right.
When that's not the reality. That's just my fears.
Yeah.
And so you will then parent based on that fear.
True.
So you can't parent based on your fear of what you think your child is going to end up like. So that's probably one of them. My daughter is really strong-willed. She is the definition of meeting my match. She's Virgo.
Yeah.
She is somebody that could run the country already. She wants to do everything herself.
Independent.
Yeah, she's really independent. She will not listen. And it's funny because I say that and I'm like, she doesn't listen, but she's just very much in her own world and she runs at her own pace.
Yeah.
And for someone like that, being somebody that really strives off control and planned and running my own race, I've met my match. So I almost have to sit in the moment with her, even though I feel like I don't have the time to.
Yeah.
And so I guess that is a teaching in slowing down in itself.
Yeah.
So she almost forces me to slow down. Whereas Ezzy, my oldest, will just go with me.
Yeah.
It's very much like, okay, Mum, yeah, we got to do this. Okay, Mum.
Yeah. Do you think that's the dynamic of being like an older sibling, like the oldest?
Yeah, he's a sweetheart. He's just such a, he's like a, I don't want to say it, but he's like the golden child. He's very much, like I had him and he really made motherhood look like angelic and beautiful and he was such a beautiful kid to have first because he really made me love motherhood. Could have been complete opposite. Daisy makes me love motherhood as well, but gosh, it's challenging because of her making me so down, and she's pretty much me in a miniature version.
Yeah.
And she is she's definitely what makes me relive like past traumas. And especially how I react to her. I think, oh my God, my mom used to react to me like that.
Yeah.
So it really makes you reflect and go, whoa, like how do you break that cycle?
True.
So you have to be really conscious.
Yeah.
But one of the things I learned is if you are questioning things like that, or if you are actually aware of those things, you're already half the way there.
Yes,
actually,
exactly. To breaking the cycle.
Yeah.
And to healing your own childhood traumas
100%.
as well.
Yeah.
Love that. I'll get you to close. And with your job role, as you do coach, are they all mothers, all of your clients?
Not all of them, most of them.
Yeah.
I do have some women who aren't mums.
Yeah.
But would like to be.
Yeah.
One day. And I feel like that's just a reflection of me and my age, that maybe makes these women work with me.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it is like, it's almost who you are as well is your brand. So
100%.
They gravitate towards that.
100%, yeah. And so I will always have women within my age, like within the same age range as myself. But yeah, majority are mums or mums to be, And I would say in the last 2 years, I've really honed in on working with mothers because, again, that is who I was. And it's funny, I do see a lot of women going into the pre and postnatal training space after having one baby.
Yeah.
And it's fine. But I think back to how much I knew after one baby, and it was nothing compared to how much I know with 3. Not to mention I've done extra qualifications since then as well. So I completed a corrective exercise specialist course, which is almost like the premium of pre and postnatal training, but very much honed in on anatomy and how the body changes and corrective exercises to help women train with hernias, prolapses, C-sections or any sort of other chronic pain or injuries they may have gotten from pregnancy, because it takes a huge toll on the body.
Yeah.
And so with my training background, I thought, well, I'm going to specialise in strength training for pre and postnatal women because it's the most efficient and effective way to train women and mothers. And mothers don't have all the time in the world to train. And so it was one of those things where it's like, okay, a lot of mums will do what you've always done, or we'll go do Pilates because it's like you think of pregnancy and a lot of women just automatically gravitate towards Pilates.
Yeah.
But we know that isn't the most efficient and effective way to train. And so I thought there's a really big gap in the market.
Definitely.
And more just a gap of knowledge.
Yeah.
And not just from trainers, but from allied health professionals as well. And so I guess that's my absolute vision and mission, is to fill the knowledge gap and then to create an online environment and a service that gets mothers to where they want to be efficiently and effectively. And strength training is the tool or the vehicle for that.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's scary because a lot of mums haven't lifted weights before, or they can't leave home, so they need to buy dumbbells and bands. And a lot of mums that I have, the thought of them signing up is really overwhelming because they're like, this is a lifestyle change. I don't run 8-week challenges or 12-week challenges.
Yeah.
I may, in the future. But the reason I don't is because the things that I teach my clients are for long-term results and sustainability.
Yeah.
I don't want my mothers to break their bodies apart. I don't call it a bounce back. I call it a rebuild. Because one, they'll end up so much better than what they were postpartum, or not postpartum, but prenatally and before they were pregnant. And it's not about breaking your body down. It's about building new habits so that you continue to progress and get better.
Yeah, like a lifestyle.
Absolutely.
Rather than just something that needs to get ticked off.
100%. And you are a reflection of your everyday habits.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah, you absolutely are. And mothers, and when you think about it, mothers will put themselves last and they don't fill their own cup up first.
Like prioritising the whole family, the kids.
Yeah, they fall into that. And again, that stems from that guilt. It's like this vicious cycle. And women, I always have mothers message me saying, can I get, strong and toned and fit from doing Pilates? And the answer is no. And they probably don't want to hear that because Pilates is,
it's advertised as that.
It's advertised as that. But it's also social connection. Like, I think mothers gravitate towards group classes and Pilates because it gives them that social connection.
That's true.
Yeah. So then when you have to step away from that and do a one-to-one program, which is much more advantageous, effective and efficient because it's tailored for you.
Yeah.
You do take away an element that is probably really important for the mother, which is that social connection.
Yeah. What are common misconceptions with like training and postpartum, or even training while being pregnant?
Yeah, I think one of them is, I've mentioned it before, is do what you've always done. Yeah. The second one is just jumping back into group training classes. Like it's okay to jump back into training classes. The third one is the Pilates or yoga thing, like I'm just going to go do Pilates, or I'm just going to go back to yoga. Yeah. And that they can't lift heavy or do strenuous exercise during pregnancy.
Yeah.
Or even begin if they haven't begun in the past. So if they weren't training previously, they're now not allowed to train during pregnancy. But the reality is, when you look at anatomy and you understand the body, that works as a kinetic chain. So the body doesn't just function as single units. It functions as a whole.
Yeah.
And so when you're pregnant, your body is really clever and it'll adapt to the changes that are being made.
Yeah.
And if you don't use a part of your body, that muscle or that part of your body will lay dormant. And so other muscles have to come in and compensate. And so think about a pregnant woman. She'll get like a anterior pelvic tilt and she'll lean into her back. And so the muscles in the back get shortened. But then certain other muscles get lengthened. Let's say the abdominal muscles, because you're growing a baby, they need to lengthen, but then all of a sudden you're leaning back.
Yeah.
And the muscles in the back get shortened.
Yeah.
Now the muscles in the abdomen are working harder, but so are the back muscles as well. But they're not moving, they're not lengthening, and they're not shortening. And you have to think a muscle that is healthy and works optimally shortens and lengthens. And so when you're not exercising or moving those muscles, they will just stay as they are.
Yeah.
And so that's the importance of movement, but it's also the importance of keeping muscles strong, because if they're weak, other muscles come and take over.
Yeah.
So that's the things that group classes don't rectify. They'll just say, oh, if this feels bad, do it like this, or if this feels good, do it like this, because they don't have the capacity to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, there's a big misconception that some women are doing the right thing by going to Pilates or group classes that aren't specifically tailored for certain stages of pregnancy or in their postpartum.
Yeah.
And then they end up potentially doing more damage than good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then they might end up with prolapse, or they might end up with pelvic floor dysfunction, or they might end up with pubic bone pain. And generally when those issues come up, women then stop altogether, and then they don't train for years and years and years.
Yeah.
And then they end up unhappy with themselves. And
then that's a whole
spirals.
cycle. Yeah.
100%.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wow. There's a lot that I think it's not common knowledge.
No.
Not a lot of people know it.
No. 100%
Why?
they don't. Because allied health, we don't have the support in the healthcare system, do we?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. And so you also need a team of individuals when you're pregnant. It's not just, it's funny, you fall pregnant and then you contact the hospital, you get put into a system, you go have regular appointments for checkups, but they don't check anything to do with your pelvic floor. They don't even teach you what your pelvic floor is. And that's really important, because that's what's going to allow you to push a baby out.
True.
And if you have any aches or pains, they have no idea where it's coming from. They don't know who to refer you to. They don't know if you should be doing any training or not. They just give the advice of do what you've always done, because that's safer than giving any other sort of pregnancy advice. And then it just becomes too hard. And so women just don't train. The statistics are that 40% of women train during pregnancy.
Yeah.
But then another 10% drop off during pregnancy and only train less than 3 times a week.
And I also was talking to someone in a class the other day, and they were looking into doing focusing their counselling career with people postpartum. Yeah. Because apparently she was saying that there really isn't any much help after you give birth.
No. Yeah. You have a baby, they come and look at your baby, 2 to 3 times generally. They might look at you, depending on how you respond to their questions. And then you're done. Yeah. There isn't anything to do with postpartum counselling, and mothers really do struggle. Yes. And I always say to mums, make sure you're in it. I popped a thing up on Instagram previously as well about weight loss, because there's such a focus for women in their postpartum to lose the weight. And I understand why, because you've now given birth and your body is just completely different. You just can't identify what it is or who you are. You're just this new person, completely vulnerable, and you want to feel connected to a part of yourself that feels familiar. Yeah. And you don't feel familiar to yourself anymore. Yeah. Everything just feels foreign. Yeah. And so I know that there's this big thing, on social media and Instagram, that you shouldn't want to have to bounce back, and there shouldn't be all this pressure. But the pressure doesn't really come from the outside. I think it comes from the inside, and it's not even a pressure. It's just that want to connect with your previous self again, to something that feels familiar. And that's what it does. True. Yeah. So if you let it go through pregnancy, And that's what exercise has done for me, or strength training's done for me, is I've always felt connected to my previous self, or myself in itself, because I've never let that go. Yeah. And there might be times where it's regressed or progressed, but it's still there.
It's still there. It's still present in your life.
100%.
Yeah. I love that.
Wow. So I feel like we've got it wrong.
Yeah.
And people don't know where that want comes from, but it's definitely comes from like connecting back with yourself.
Yeah. And who you were prior to.
Yeah, you're not just a mum. You are still that person.
Yeah.
But you are now a mum. You've got this added identity.
Yes.
Yeah.
With that whole identity as well, how did you find it a struggle to separate that, like, from you're not just a mum type of thing?
Yeah. That's a good question. Yes and no. Again, because I strength trained through every pregnancy.
Yeah. You've maintained that relationship.
I've maintained that relationship with myself.
Yeah.
And that is what brings me home to myself.
Yeah.
And I think if I hadn't, I would feel really lost.
Yeah.
And as I was saying before at the start, like, it's something that allows me to just hone in on what I'm doing in that moment. I don't have to think about anything else. So it really is a relief for me, both physically and mentally. But again, I know a lot of mums that struggle with that identity shift.
Yeah. What do you say to them?
Again, the biggest one is communication.
Yeah.
And I definitely empathise because I've been there. But I know what's on the other side as well, because again, I've been there. Like, I know what it's like to have or feel like you don't have support. But I also know what it's like to feel like you do have support, because I have support. I know what it feels like to feel stuck. I know what it feels like to communicate.
Yeah.
But it really is, like, again, in a post that I've done, before you want to lose weight, like, make sure you're sleeping. And that's really hard to say to a mum who's just given birth, and you're not going to be sleeping the way that you used to sleep before, but make sure that you are sleeping somewhat.
Yeah.
Don't then just put an extra element into your life and think that that's going to make everything better because you're now going to be working on yourself. Make sure you are communicating with your partner, and that you can communicate with your partner. And if you can't, that's maybe the first step, I would say, before you even were to start an exercise routine or begin to want to improve yourself. Yeah. Because it's not just you anymore. And that's probably something that I haven't mentioned. Like, you and your partner, before you had a baby, could go do your own things, and you'd come back at the end of the night after work or whatever you were doing, and then you would consider each other. Yeah. But you don't have to consider each other all day. But now that there's a baby in the mix, or somebody that depends on the both of you, so you have to consider each other. So the mum just can't go off and train. They have to now ask the dad, do you mind minding Bubs while I go train? And the dad has to be like, oh, actually, I was going to go do this, or, yeah, that's fine. So it's like, that is what is tricky. You can't just go do your own thing anymore. You now have to ask the person that you live with if that's okay. And that's where that joke is like, can I go to the toilet? Can I go for a shower? Because you're literally like, do you mind if I go for a shower for 10 minutes? And you're like, yeah, go. Because it's a lot sometimes. Yeah.
Do you, because, like, from what I see on socials, you are very, like, passionate and knowledgeable with the things that you do share. How did you hone in on this? Like, and also the confidence of just speaking, like, what you believe in.
Oh, yeah. That's an interesting one. I think I was talking about this with the hairdresser before.
Oh, slay.
So I reckon it took a couple of years. I had imposter syndrome to start with. And I would want to copy what other people were doing. So if other people were successful, I'd look at what they were doing and be like, I want to do that, I'm going to do that. And then I started reading a few, like, self-development books. And it's weird. As soon as you hone in or you direct your attention somewhere, those things start to come up on your Instagram feed. Just started sharing my experience and my knowledge based on my experience. But I'm always someone that wants to know the why behind why you do something.
Yeah, same.
And so that then fueled, I guess, extra learnings off my own back. And then I invested in myself. And I guess when you know something, and you can articulate what you know really well,
Yeah.
you then back yourself. And so I kept doing courses and I kept applying knowledge. And when you are really interested in something, you absorb it.
Yeah.
You're like a sponge. And I it's so funny, Sam would be like, can you stop after this? Are you
Yeah.
doing anything else? And I'd be like, oh, I don't know. And I remember at 36 weeks pregnant, I even went and did like a strength seminar with Sebastian Oreb and Hattie Boydell. I was like, I have to go.
Yeah.
I'm like 36 weeks pregnant, but I have to go.
Yeah.
I just really, I do. I'm really passionate about it. And I don't feel like I should provide a service unless I know the why.
That's good.
Yeah. And so everything I do post is backed by science or
Yes.
backed by a why.
And research.
And research, yeah.
Because that's how it's perceived from me anyway. So
yeah.
I think like...
that's good because that's the way it should be.
And maybe that's why the people that do come to you as clients, they see that as well.
Yeah. I've never wanted to just be a trainer that people come to me because they wanted to look like me.
Right.
Because I'm not going to make you look like me.
Yeah.
And that's going to serve you no purpose.
Yeah.
But I want to be able to give you the knowledge, the tools, the habits,
Yeah.
the support that you need to then go and do what you need to do for the rest of your life.
Yeah, yeah.
Like the aim of the game is not to improve now, it's to improve for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Because that is literally what's going to give you health and longevity. Like you want to be able to get off the toilet at 80. You want to be able to build muscle after you're 50. And we could go into a whole other section and talk about menopause. And women haven't even thought about menopause.
Yeah.
You know, like these years, you know, 30 and above or even 28 and above are the years that women need to start thinking about menopause.
Yeah.
And if you don't do anything now, like you're going to have a really hard time in menopause. Not just from an aesthetic point of view, but a functioning point of view.
Yeah.
Like hormones dropping and all the hormonal and physical changes that occur during menopause are really challenging for women. Gosh, we have a really hard time. And so again, you could probably think about that as like, you know, you've gone through an identity shift with pregnancy and babies, but you go through another identity shift in menopause.
Yeah. I don't know much about menopause. Like,
Do you not?
No.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
So what is like, what's entailed with that?
So when you go through menopause, your hormones pretty much do a bit of a dance. You lose your hormones. And your hormones, having a certain level of hormones in your body is what keeps your menstrual cycle going. It's what affects your aesthetics in terms of muscle retention and muscle loss. And so when we look at hormones, estrogen is anabolic in nature. And so when I say anabolic, it helps or supports muscle building. And progesterone is catabolic in nature. And so that, I guess, doesn't help muscle building, but it breaks down muscle.
Yeah.
And when we have an imbalance, you can see how that might affect your ability to retain muscle strength, etc. And when you think of how much muscle you have, that correlates with bone mineral density. And so if you lose muscle or you don't strength train throughout those years, you'll lose bone mineral density and then you'll start to feel horrible.
Yeah.
And your bones will ache and you won't move as well. And so it's actually a lot harder for women to pick their fitness up during menopause than what it is to have a really solid, you know, strength training regime before entering menopause and then continuing after.
Yeah.
When you hit menopause, it's really about the intensity of your training to stimulate certain muscle fibers to respond so that you can build and sustain muscle.
Yeah.
And they actually did studies on women who resistance trained 3 times a week and supplemented with creatine. And if you're not supplementing with creatine, you should be.
I am.
Amazing. It's not just got strength and physical benefits, but it's also got mental benefits as well.
See, Jimmy just told me, have this because it's like stores some water in the muscle.
It pretty much acts as like it pretty much recycles energy, essentially. Okay. And they've done studies, on people, and they are roughly 14% stronger. Yeah. So if you can lift more and you perform better, then you see better results, obviously. But they've also done studies in elderly and their cognition has improved. So they will like give creatine to a group and then not give creatine to a group.
Yeah.
And then the group that has gotten creatine, they'll give them, I guess, like a mental puzzle to do. And people that had creatine had better cognition in completing the puzzle essentially than the elderly that didn't. So it's the most studied supplement. Yeah. Wow. And so it's pretty amazing. But they pretty much did a study with women. Yeah. Postmenopausal women. And they resistance trained 3 times a week and took creatine daily. You have to take it daily because it needs to saturate the muscles. Yeah. It takes about 30 days to kick in to see the effects, or to feel the effects, should I say. And the women who resistance trained 3 times a week and took creatine ended up increasing their bone mineral density, which is huge. Yeah. So huge, being postmenopausal. So yeah, that's a pretty significant difference, and that's only 3 times a week taking creatine as well. And obviously training at a capacity that utilizes all the things that they should be utilizing, like progressive overload, and training on a program so they can actually progressively overload and lift more weight over the course of their program. But yeah, that's pretty much menopause in a nutshell. Yeah. And why you should be taking creatine and why you should be, I guess, completing a strength training program.
Yeah. And so do you, when you're coaching your clients, are you also discussing like menopause as well?
I mean, I do discuss it. Yeah. I do bring it up, but then they're like, I'm not even thinking about that yet. And I'm like, of course you don't.
Dunk on someone.
Yeah. So it's not like
you had a baby and now you're going to get menopause.
Yeah. It's not a focus. Yeah. But when people start, I always sort of say it's quite humbling to experience certain things that they experience. And then I say, oh, wait till you reach menopause. Yeah. They're like, oh, I haven't even thought about that.
True.
But I guess it's already in the back of my mind, because I'm already thinking about it, and my mum's going through it, and she already gets hot flushes, and I've seen how her body's changed too. Not that it looks bad, but she's even realized, she's like, oh gosh, like, yeah, she's actually like her menopause isn't bad at all. Like she just gets hot flashes. That's it. But a lot of women struggle mentally with menopause.
It is like saying goodbye to another version of yourself.
100%. Yeah.
Well, moving on to like a lighter topic, menopause. No, but I want to know as well, because I know you are in comp prep. How has that been like for you?
Yeah, well, it's actually been really good. I almost think people are really expecting me to tell them about the grueling comp prep days that I've had.
Because how many have you done?
Oh gosh, this is like my first one in 5 years. Yeah. The last one I did was before my son was born. Yeah. So only a few. Yeah. And they've changed a lot. So everything's changed. The posing's changed. The conditioning's changed. The quality has changed. The federations have changed. Yeah. And I said to Sam after I had Bear, or even before, I was like, I'm going to train for a comp after I have Bear. And he was like, really? I was like, yeah, I just have to do one more. And I reached out to my coach. I was sort of having a look at coaches while I was pregnant. I reached out to my coach, and I said, I've been strength training. I think I have a fair bit of muscle. Yeah. But you decide. Now I do. Yeah. There's a lot more there than what there was after pregnancy. I said, but you decide what federation I go into. The one thing that would stop me from competing is if I stopped breastfeeding. Right. Because I breastfeed and I breastfed, and I didn't want that to compromise me breastfeeding.
Yes, true.
And he was like, well, I don't really have much experience with breastfeeding, but you shouldn't lose your milk supply. And I was pretty confident that I wasn't going to lose it anyway. I eat a really healthy diet. And it really just depended. We really weren't sure, but I set that expectation from the beginning. If it was ever going to compromise my milk supply, that's when I'd have to pull out. And he was like, of course, that sounds great. Yeah. And so we built up, initially we did a cut to see how my body responded to dieting. So it's really advantageous because lots of people think that everyone responds the same, but people respond differently. Yeah. And it's really based on their background history, hormones, stress, sleep, how they eat, what they eat, how they recover from their training, how much inflammation they hold. And so we did a mini cut to see how I responded, and I responded pretty well. Yeah. And then we went into a build phase where my calories increased. So I was eating about 3,000 calories a day, which was epic. I loved it.
Yeah.
And that was when I was gaining weight, doing my best to gain weight. So it took a little bit for me to get into a surplus. My body was just churning through the calories. And finally reached a point where weight was stable and I was in a really good spot to build some substantial muscle. But I didn't really need to build that much anyway, but enough. And then I started my comp prep at 21 weeks out from this comp, and my comp is next week.
Yeah.
And my dieting phase started at roughly anywhere between, I think, 2,300 and 2,600 calories, which is a lot of calories for people who calorie count. They'll go, whoa, that's a lot. But because I had pushed calories so high, I didn't have to push calories too low.
Yeah.
They're currently, and this has only been for 1 week, at 1,600 and 1,900 calories, which is really low for me.
Yeah.
But when I work with women, that is like their maintenance because their body has adapted to them not eating a consistent amount day in, day out. And so I've actually had a really good comp prep. And I've only had to I resistance train 4 times a week. My cardio has increased from 2 cardio sessions a week to 4 cardio sessions a week. I walk 12,000 steps a day.
Oof.
And yes, I track my food, but I would track my food anyway to ensure that I'm getting enough of the food I need. And I always say to people, do you track the money that goes in and out of your bank account? And they're like, yes. And I was like, well, why wouldn't you track the food that goes in and out of your body?
True.
And there will be times where you spend without checking your bank account. Like you go shopping and then you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
And that's the same with food.
Yeah.
You go and enjoy yourself and you won't track it. But majority of the time you're probably tracking the money that comes out of your bank account. So you might want to track the food that goes into your body. Yeah. And so, it hasn't really been anything different to what I would usually do.
Because you've always had this lifestyle.
Yeah. So has it been more intense? Yes. Has it been challenging with children? Yes, but my kids eat the same food as me, so I don't cook different food. They eat the same food. Having a good relationship with food's helped. Having a good relationship with exercise already has helped. And you wouldn't go into a comp prep unless you had the relationship I had already with food and exercise.
Because people can go in for the wrong reasons.
100%. Yeah. They do use it as a tool to help them work towards something, which I completely understand.
Yeah, as a goal.
Yeah. But that wasn't the end goal for me. I said to my husband, I want to be in the best shape of my life at 30, and I really strive from working towards goals and achieving things. And I, like, honestly, going into next week's comp, people say, you're going to smash it, yada yada. And I said, honestly, whatever happens, like, it's just the cherry on top of the cake. Yeah. Like, I've already made the cake. Yeah. And people are like, oh my God, that's so good. And I'm like, but I've made the cake. Like, it's done. It's here. This is what I am.
Yeah. That in itself is an accomplishment.
100%. Yeah. Like, it's the journey, and I've loved the journey. As soon as I reach the end goal, it's over. That's sad. And people really struggle to lean into their journeys and enjoy their journeys. Because once they reach that end goal, they're like, okay, now what? And they lose direction and they lose themselves. Yeah. I've done it with so many women. They get to the end goal and they're like, whoa, I'm here. And then that's it for them. But it's like, what do you do now? Yeah.
True. I love that. How do you, like, do all of it? Because you're obviously doing so much comp prep, managing the household, being a mum, being a business owner. How do you do that all?
You have to create a system that works. You want to pre-plan what you need to do the next day and build a system that works for you. Yeah. So for me, for example, I will look at the next day before the day's even begun and I know what I need to do. I know if I need to train. I know if I need to take the kids to kinder. I know if I need to go to the market and do my grocery shopping. Yeah. I know if I need to take my daughter to dancing. And then I come home and I know if I need to put my baby down for a nap or if he's going to have 1 or 2 naps that day. The nap might not go to plan, but I've already executed the plan based on what I need to do. And then having the flexibility to lean into the unknown in terms of, when I say unknown, my baby might nap for half an hour, and that is really frustrating. But I always say to my clients and myself, like, hey, what can I control now? So if my baby naps for half an hour and I needed to work in that half an hour, but he's now woken up, okay, I need to get my steps done. Let's all go for a walk outside. So we'll go do that. Then that's one more thing off my list. And then we come back, cook dinner, and I have a system for how my days roll every single day. And they follow a similar system. Generally, the morning is when I concentrate on my kids and what they need to do. The afternoon, they might nap. I'll work. The evening or afternoon, evening, I'll go train. I'll make sure dinner's ready before I go train. And then I put my kids to bed at night and I work. And that is a system in itself.
Yeah.
And I've pre-planned that system and it's worked. And I've refined that system over time.
Yeah.
Because there's times where you do need to refine it or you do need to tweak it based on what your kids are doing, what you're doing.
And they're growing as well, continuously.
100%. But the system is in place.
Yeah.
And so I swear by how I live my life. I'm very routine. I'm a creature of habit. And it might be boring, but it gets the job done.
Yeah. And it's also teaching your children as well. Like, they're witnessing you.
They know. Yeah. And it's hard because they're like, Mummy, can you play? And I'm like, well, I'd love to play, but I have to do this first. And they're like, okay, yeah, I get it. And then my son will be like, oh. And I say, well, if I don't cook dinner, what are we going to eat?
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't know. And then he realizes. And so, yeah, I just include them as well. I'm like, why don't you come help me make dinner?
Yeah.
He's like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah,
and that really takes a little bit longer.
Yeah, true.
But yeah, it does build their skills.
Yeah.
So you have to find a balance of, okay, these are my systems. These are the unpredictabilities. How can I control the controllables? And then be okay with things not going 100% to plan.
That's a tough one for a lot, even myself.
Yeah, 100%, because it's frustrating.
Yeah.
But, you know, when you've got like a skeleton system in place, you sort of can always come back to something. Yeah. And by the end of the day, you've ticked off your list. You're good to go. You start the next day again. Yeah.
And it obviously helps that, you know, your home life is really, you're working together in flow.
100%.
Yeah.
Really supportive. Again, my partner knows exactly what I do. We chat during the day. Like, he'll message me during the day. How's your day going?
Yeah.
I'll message him during the day. How's your day going?
Yeah.
We're always in communication.
Yeah.
I don't think we ever go a whole day without talking.
That's good. I love that. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing about everything. Like, you're so knowledgeable and I loved having you on here as a guest.
Oh, thank you.
And you're looking stunning. I'll spray your face. I'll get you to close. And then I'll give you the mirror. Are you doing anything afterwards? Or just
go home, cook dinner?
With glam.
Go home, cook dinner, look good. Oh, thanks, Lucy.